who have been protected and encouraged by a bunch of white supremacists in the Louisiana state government, including the inbred hayseed governor John Bel Edwards. And for the record, Governor Edwards is a Democrat. That's interesting considering that in Louisiana, you got the Republicans who dominate the state legislature. And yet both Democrats and Republicans are able to see eye to eye when it comes on the need to run interference for and protect the thugs in blue. This murder occurred 2 years ago, and yet the governor claims that it's still under investigation 2 years later. So when you see what happened after the murder of Andrew Brown in North Carolina, a Republican state, and in Louisiana, you got a Democrat governor who's doing the exact same covering for the killers, you understand that this is a concerted effort against us. These murders and the subsequent refusal to punish the murderers is not some sort of accident of the system. This is them telling you this is what we're doing. We are all united and arrayed against you, and we're going to make sure that nothing happens. When a group of people are being continually murdered with complete impunity, do they not have a right to defend themselves? Indeed, to be proactive in their defense. If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon, so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed. And of course, be sure to give the video a like, as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. The murder of Ronald Greene is vomitous, sickening, infuriating, and enraging, as it should be to anyone with a moral compass. But the one thing we cannot say that it is surprising. Nor is the collaboration of the so-called Democrat governor of that state. By the way, as I posted for you on Twitter, John Bel Edwards was also the governor of Louisiana 5 years ago when Gavin Long was accused of having punished the Baton Rouge Police Department. It was Bel Edwards himself who said to the black community, no less, what happened wasn't justice. But of course, Governor Hayseed is nowhere to be found. When the issue of Ronald Greene comes up, all of a sudden, John Bel Edwards is somewhere around the moonshine still, or what have you, but he's not granting any interviews and he's not speaking on the matter. 2 years? This was just like in Chicago with the murder of Laquan McDonald. That also had video that the Democrat authorities kept covered up, and the Republicans did not at all have a problem with that. Notice how there's complete and thorough bipartisan support for covering up and defending the murders of black people. Democrats and Republicans can't agree on anything except for we got to both work together to make sure that black people are killed with impunity as long as black folks sit on their hands and allow it. My most recent video that I posted just a few days ago was on this very subject, defending those who defend themselves. We have a right to be safe and secure wherever we are. We have a right to protect ourselves. But more importantly than that, there is no obligation on the part of black people to just sit on our hands idly by while we're killed and the murderers walk the streets. And the people who are supposed to be enforcing the law, the people who are supposed to be upholding the law, are in fact deciding they're going to ignore it where black people are concerned. We have no obligation to allow our rights, starting with the right to live, to be trampled upon. If you are in the middle of a barren desert, then it falls to you to produce water. If you happen to be hungry and there's no grocery stores around, it falls to you to produce food and sustenance. If you happen to be exposed to the elements, it falls to you to produce shelter if you're not in a place that already has it. And when you are in a circumstance or situation where you are the perpetual victim of injustice, it falls to those who are being oppressed to produce justice. When somebody is trying to lift an impoverished neighborhood, their own impoverished neighborhood, out of poverty, they have a right to do so, but they also have a right to expect that their neighbors and friends and family who are going to benefit from their efforts should support their efforts. When you have somebody who sees illiteracy and ignorance run rampant in their community, and they take steps to make sure that kids learn how to read, set up reading programs for people over 18, to make sure that there's literacy in their area. Not only do they have a right to uplift the mentality of their people, but they also have a right to expect the support of the people who benefit from their efforts. When you have Black people who are making it clear we are not going to be victims and not going to be targets, not only do they have the right to do so, but they also have the right to expect the support of Black people when they're doing the right thing. The racist animals who murdered Ronald Greene, beat the man to death, electrocuted him to death, they did so because they understand that as long as Black people are waiting for the John Bell Edwards and others, the friends, family, and acquaintances, the pals, buddies, and collaborators with these white supremacists to punish them, well, that means they're never going to be punished. And as Black people, we have no obligation to just wait and see which one of us these white supremacists are going to beat to death, electrocute to death, murder, shoot to death next. We have no obligation to wait to see who's going to be the next victim. We know who the murderers are. This is a white supremacist army that is organized top to bottom. It's no accident that you have members of government who make it very clear that they stand with the murderers. They're not merely cheerleading for them. They are acting as support staff for these race soldiers, no different than if you have enemy combatants. On a battlefield, you happen to have those with the guns, but you also got individuals behind those with the guns, backing them up, supporting them, helping to coordinate their efforts, and helping to try to support them in any way that they can. This is what we are seeing from these so-called government officials, be they the DAs, be they the judges, be they the politicians. These are not merely murders by a pack of white supremacist trash. These are, in fact, executions being carried out under the aegis of the state. You got the politicians who are supporting it, the politicians who make it clear that unless the video comes to light or unless sufficient public pressure is put on them, why? They're not going to do anything about it. They are collaborators. They happen to be accessories to these murders because that's how they're acting. You see, in the case of Ronald Greene, using him as a case study, you had this narrative that these white supremacist trash in Louisiana tried to push that, well, there was only one of the state troopers who we're going to claim as the main one responsible for beating Ronald Greene to death. We're going to try to say this Hollingsworth character. We're going to say that he's the main one, and hopefully we can have him be the fall guy and now get the heat off the rest of us. Well, Hollingsworth, when he found out that he was going to be fired by the state troopers, this Hollingsworth animal saw the uprisings last year, was like, oh man, I'm going the way of Derek Chauvin then. See, these bastards are cowards. Because this Hollingsworth character, as soon as he found out that he was going to be fired, he immediately decided that he was going to have a one-vehicle accident, as the white media calls it. And that's very interesting because that was the lie that they told about Ronald Greene. They claimed, oh, his injuries came from him having a one-car accident. He hit a tree or something. Even the medical examiner wrote that this, quote, that none of this adds up. But the thing is, their lie, that's the very lie that they themselves use. So call it what you want, the ancestors, Ogun, poetic justice, what have you, that the animal who they were going to try to turn into the fall guy for the murder of Ronald Greene, one of the murderers himself had the very thing happen to him that he tried to lie and claim happened to Ronald Greene. I guess some of the old folks were right. What comes out of your mouth will come into your life or death. But wouldn't you know that just to make it clear to the Black community where the white supremacists in Louisiana stand, the Louisiana state troopers decided they were going to bury this white supremacist animal, and they even had an honor guard for him and all that. They showed up to make sure they wanted to show their support for him because of what he did. A good white supremacist race soldier. We want to make certain that we show everybody we stand in solidarity and support for him because he was doing our work. He was doing the job. That's what they mean when they say we don't want them to be scared to do their job. Yeah, the unwarranted violent killings of Black people, that's their job. And they wanted to show that they were saluting him for doing his job. This is a complete and utter state of lawlessness, not just in North Carolina, not just in Louisiana, but nation freaking wide, worldwide. What the white supremacists want is for Black people to sit back and wait to see when they're going to start punishing the very race soldiers that they set up, put out there and protect in the first place. This didn't happen in a vacuum. It happens on a continuum of support and protection for white supremacists who kill Black people. I posted for you on Twitter. They're up. 4. In fact, I think there was actually one more of these animals who took part in the murder of Ronald Greene. These bastards are still on the loose. Jacob Brown, Randall Dickerson, Dakota DeMoss, and George Harper. That's the bastards' names. You have these so-called authorities in Louisiana who are saying that, well, we're going to charge them with simple battery. They took part in murder, not just murder, but torturing a man to death, assault, the whole 9 yards. And yet you got the authorities saying, well, we're just going to say simple battery. And the reason why, of course, is they are showing their support. They are showing that these guys carried out our wishes, our directives. These are the so-called political leaders. This is what a race war looks like. You got the political staff, the political class, who are throwing their full support, protection, and everything that they have behind their foot soldiers. This is precisely what happened in Nazi Germany, precisely what happened in the Soviet Union, precisely what happened in any authoritarian state from South Africa to North Korea. This is how it always goes. You can't be punishing them for it because they're carrying out what the directives are of the political leaders. Now, what are an oppressed people to do when this is the kind of opposition that they're facing? It is obvious that the reason that the murderers are not getting punished is because the politicians are not giving just a wink and a nod. They are giving their open, full-throated support, approbation, and encouragement. John Bigot Edwards, the governor, the little inbred down there, he had no problem 5 years ago saying that of Gavin Long, this wasn't justice. But with the family of Ronald Greene, he hasn't found any way to say what happened to Ronald Greene wasn't justice. Yeah, see, he doesn't have anything to say for that. By the way, this piece of dog crap, Edwards, he's been reelected. This is his second and final term. It's not as if he's going to get voted out or that he could be recalled or anything else. And yet what you see is he's not saying this crap. He is not protecting these murderers because he's scared that he's going to lose his job as governor. That's already secured. His problem happens to be, well, I'm supposed to get kicked off by these guys. And well, this is my social circle, and these are the people who I like. And well, truth be told, the similarities outweigh the differences. That's what this is really about. So you see, it doesn't matter if it's Democrats or Republicans. It doesn't matter if it's the East Coast or the Deep South, or the Midwest. It's the exact same pattern everywhere. And I don't believe there's necessarily happenstance that this video has come to light now. Is the summer of 2021 going to be even hotter than the summer of 2020? Are people going to be taken to the streets, pulling up? The white supremacists are playing a game of chicken with decent black folks. They're playing a game of chicken, and the game is to see who blinks. It's a matter of, we're going to keep doing this mess because we're operating under the presupposition that that everyone's going to follow the rules except for us. That's the game that they're playing here. Oh, everybody's going to follow the law except for us. We're going to just do whatever we want to do, and we'll see how long it is before people decide, you know what, there is no law other than to make sure that these white supremacists are no threat to anyone. They're playing a very dangerous game right now. And what they thought to themselves last year was, well, we almost came this close to the power of the people being turned against us in a massive way. That's the reason why the bastards were on their knees. See, as soon as you stand up, they're the ones who get on their knees. But as long as you're content to stay on your knees, they're going to be sitting here deciding they can kill at will. The reason that the murderer Derek Chauvin's in a cage where he belongs, though actually a grave is where he actually belongs, the reason that that's the case is because the authorities in Minnesota, from the police to the DAs to the judges, they got put on notice. The public knows exactly what the hell it is that they were doing. They have created a state of complete and utter lawlessness and injustice, and the people were now about to restore order, and they were about to produce justice. Because the people are always the last line of defense when it comes to justice. Justice is not something that you get from the police. They're the ones who destroy justice. Justice doesn't come from the judges. They're the ones who undermine justice. Justice doesn't come from the DAs. These bastards dedicate their entire lives, such as they are, to trying to undermine justice. Justice comes from one source and one source only, the people. Now, you can have police and DAs and judges who are supposed to be the otherwise administrative custodians to carry out the functions that the people want. But whenever the police and the DAs and the judges decide we're not carrying out anything, we're going to instead be attacking the people, and we're going to take the very apparatuses that the people established in order to administrate justice, and we're going to turn it into a rubber stamp committee that'll sign off on any killing that our white supremacist thugs commit. When that occurs, you no longer have justice. And the people have every right to not just stand idly by while this goes on. They have to produce justice. They have to restore order from the white supremacist lawless mob. Nobody else is going to do it. And we have to support Black folks who make it very clear that Black people's safety and security, especially from state-sanctioned terror, is going to be assured. Black folks make it very clear. We do not merely stand for our safety and security in the face of state-sanctioned violence, but we support those who do, so they understand that they are not alone, so they understand that people have their backs. We got the backs of the good guys. Because the only ones who have the thugs and blues back, well, you saw what happened on January 6th. Heck, there is no back the badge. Never was, never will be. There is back the white supremacist. Now there is that. But there is no back the badge. And they know that. That's why that Hollywood animal decided that he was going to kill himself. These bastards are cowards. The second that the public makes it clear, okay, it's time to boss up on you bastards, then all of a sudden they take a knee, they start trying to negotiate. Oh, they go from being a bunch of wannabe tough guys to all of a sudden they're trying to become these little half-assed diplomats. Can we talk this over? Oh my God, they're gonna punish me. I'd kill myself. That's what they are. They're cowards. They are absolute cowards. The only thing that they can rely on is that you got the people who are sitting here playing the game by the bad guys' rules instead of taking charge of the situation. The people sitting on their hands while murderers and killers and racists walk the streets, knowing that these individuals are murderers through and through, but because their fellow pals in the government say, there hasn't been a crime here, we're not doing anything. That's what they tried with Derek Chauvin. And what they found out was, that's okay. Justice is ultimately the responsibility of the people, and the people will produce justice. Then all of a sudden they said, oh, we're handing out indictments, and it's going to be for murder, and we can convict them. Oh, so now all of a sudden, they can do something because they were terrified that they were going to feel the power of the people. That's what they were scared of. The power of the people was going to touch them. That raggedy bastard DA up there in Minneapolis, he had to sell his house and flee town. They ran him out of doggone city. Yeah, because he understood that the people were making it very clear. The police are not the only ones who are going to be held accountable. We understand clearly that the DAs and the judges are acting as support staff for these murderers. That's what they were concerned about. Oh yeah, as long as they got a situation where they just carry out acts of violence completely and thoroughly with impunity. Impunity means that the people do not respond to defend themselves. That the people do not make it clear, we have seen what happened, a crime was committed here, and the people have every right to ensure that justice is produced whenever these crimes are committed. That's what they were afraid of. They were afraid that they were going to be held accountable, like that Hollingsworth animal. What was he scared of? He was scared that he was going to be held accountable. He was scared that he was going to be punished. How do you stop the next Ronald Greene from happening? You punish the bastards who murdered the last racial victim. That's the way that you stop these things from happening. White supremacy is a group sport, but so is Black empowerment. You have to support those who support justice. Because to have this happen back to back, Andrew Brown, Ronald Greene, these are the white supremacists trying to get their little courage up now. As far as they're concerned, they're going to do this egregiously, and that's the entire point. That's one of the things that I've always taught you. It is supposed to be egregious. It is supposed to be blatant and in your face. That's how you condition people to accept being abused and oppressed. It can't be subtle. It has to be clear. We are going to kill you with impunity, and then we're going to declare that nothing will be done about it, and we're going to walk the streets free as a bird, and nobody's going to hold us accountable because, well, the people who we've been killing and violating their rights day and night, well, you just don't do anything about it. That's just the way it is. And where exactly are your federal authorities at while this is going down? Because you see, there was a federal inquiry into the Ronald Greene murder last year. Now, of course, you can point out and say, well, that was the Trump DOJ. Yeah, you see Merrick Garland doing a damn thing. You see them doing anything? Oh, well, you know what? We'll look into it. Yeah, but you know who ain't looking into it? Jim Crow Joe. Because you see, while yet another example of a black person murdered by white supremacist thugs made it into the news cycle, meanwhile, you got Joe Biden signing the COVID-19 hate crimes bill, which we all recognize is nothing more than a clumsy front for a let's go after black people under the guise of black people are committing hate crimes. This is a political tool that they put in place. This is a political strategy against black people. Because after all, if black people are actually making traction, getting support around the world, and rallying the world against white supremacy by pointing out that we're the victims of hate crimes, well, this is nothing more than a 21st century version of what they did in the 60s. See, J. Edgar Hoover and others, they understood that people like Dr. King, Stokely Carmichael, and Medgar Evers and others, the real leaders of the civil rights movement, they had successfully framed that struggle as a moral struggle, with black people having the unassailable moral high ground. Oh, you had a bunch of white folks, including the Kennedys. You had white people across the board, white politicians, white media types, who made it very clear, we're going to array against you niggers, and we're going to shout you down. We own the media. We got the media megaphone, and we're going to shout you down. But it didn't work. It completely failed. Black people successfully framed the civil rights movement as a moral struggle. But J. Edgar Hoover and the Kennedys and others, white supremacists from the top of the government down to the hollers and whatever boondocks you can name, these scumbags, their idea was, we got to dirty up the civil rights leaders. See, this is where lies like Dr. King was an adulterer, that's a lie. That's an urban legend created by the J. Edgar Hoover regime and the FBI. And the reason that they wanted to do that was for one reason alone. We need to be able to say that Dr. King's not a moral man, or he's immoral somehow. So you shouldn't listen to him about all these lectures and all the rest of it. Even though that's a lie, the fact that you have the white media made it a point, we're going to repeat this lie day and night, and hopefully somebody will believe if we just repeat it long enough. That's what they did in the 60s. If black people successfully frame the racial conflict in moral terms, then we have to point to whoever the black icons or figureheads, wherever the black symbols are, or black people who become symbolic, we got to be able to point to them and say they're immoral somehow. That's what they did in the 60s, and that's what you see going on here. Black people successfully frame all of this anti-black violence in moral terms. The rest of the world looks and says, hey, look what's going on in the United States. And now it's a matter of, well, we got to say that black people are the ones committing the hate crimes. The times may change, but the lies and the liars remain the same. Joe Biden today signed the COVID-19 hate crimes bill, which passed both the House and the Senate. So Kamala Harris, who told black folks, you think I'm going to do something that only benefits black people? No! And the roly-poly Martins, the Cedric Richmonds, and the others who said, well, you got to give Biden's times now. I mean, y'all asking to do something only for black folk. Now, you got to give them. It's hard to get this stuff. Yeah, whenever this COVID bill for Asians, that wasn't hard at all. And you didn't hear Biden saying anything about, well, now that we got this hate crime bill for Asians, we need to pass the George Floyd Act. Even symbolic though it may be, there are some things in it which, if it became law, would be useful, which is why you got Negro Jim Clyburn saying, well, qualified immunity doesn't have to be outlawed. We can keep qualified immunity. That doesn't have to, the end of qualified immunity doesn't have to be part of any police bill. They're already setting the stage for basically something that will only say George Floyd's name on it, but in fact will have absolutely nothing to it. No teeth, no provisions, and of course will never be acted upon. But old Jim Crow Joe, he's smiling and beaming and strutting as he signs the COVID-19 hate crimes law. Meanwhile, what's he done for black people? Where's that police commission at? Oh, that's on ice. He's sending that to Congress, and maybe Congress will put together a committee. Maybe they won't. And even if there is some sort of committee or commission, well, all that'll happen is the same thing that they always do. They'll be, after about 2 or 3 years of some mostly white people having a make-work public funded job, they can pretend to be somebody who's going to Capitol Hill to sit around all day doing nothing. And then in 2 or 3 years, they'll say that they have produced a paper that ain't worth the cellulose it's printed on that says, here are some recommendations, and that'll be the end of that if anybody remembers it. Yeah, so the police commission, forget about it. George Floyd Policing Act, Joe Biden ain't talking about it. Hey, is Merrick Garland going to crack down on all this anti-black violence? Ain't happening either, and Joe Biden's not calling for it. So here he is, nothing for black people. By the way, where are all of those black Biden supporters at? I've been looking for the shea butter bootlicks. I've been looking for the ski-wee morons. I've been looking for all these bastards, the same idiots who were out there cheerleading for Biden 6 months ago, the Kamala bots, all the rest of those sock puppet accounts. Where the hell are these people at now? Come on, where are they at now? This is the time for you to go ahead and explain to us why it is black folks are getting killed, black people being murdered with impunity, and you got Joe Biden ain't doing a damn thing about it and is not calling for it. How is this any different than Trump? Last year, it was Trump's DOJ that opened a just strictly pro forma, just a matter of paperwork signing. It was the Justice Department basically signing off on the murder of Ronald Greene. That's as far as Trump's DOJ went with the matter last year. This year, Biden and the boys, well, that's pretty much all they're doing, if that, and even if it gets that far, assuming that it even gets to that point. So I'm trying to figure out, how is this any different than Trump? How is this better than Trump? At least with Trump, you can point clearly and say, hey, this guy wears his white supremacy like a badge of honor. With Biden, on the other hand, you're going to have a couple of hand-picked bootlicks out there who are claiming, well, Biden, he doesn't talk like Trump. He does everything else that Trump did. His attitude, his behaviors, the things that he stands for, the stance that he's taken. I've done more for black people than anyone you know. Tell that to the family of Ronald Greene. Tell that to the family of Andrew Brown. What the hell has he done for any of the black folks who have been murdered? You had trash like Cedric Richmond saying, y'all can't be making no demands. Cedric Richmond, who, by the way, is from Louisiana. Just want to make sure I remind you of that. Cedric Richmond, who happens to be a senior advisor to Biden. He's the White House Director of Public Engagement. Some do-nothing token job. Well, Cedric Richmond, he's had nothing to say about the murder of Ronald Greene. He's had nothing to say. You look to see what he said to the media, nothing. You check out his social media. He says nothing about it. So all the people who are telling us that y'all got to get Biden in there before he can do anything before he is, well, now that he's in there, he ain't doing a damn thing, is he? Of course they were going to pass that COVID hate crime bill, because white supremacy is not based on anti-Asian anything. You can go ahead and pass a law like that because white supremacy is not based on anti-Asian bigotry. So it doesn't matter what this law is, what it says, it's no threat to white supremacy at all, because that's not the foundation of white supremacy. White supremacy is based on one thing and one thing only: anti-black racism. That's the reason why they were fit to be tied during Reconstruction. That 20-year period or 15-year period of Reconstruction, that was the only real progress that black folks ever made in the country. We all saw that the first thing the white supremacists did was to attack those prosperous black townships and enclaves. They made it a point to do so. They were trying to undo everything that happened during Reconstruction, which they did, because both political parties were engaged in it. Black security black prosperity. These are the only things that threaten white supremacy. If black people are safe to live their lives, then what happens is they're going to be focusing on building because they're not out here with a bunch of white supremacists who are shooting at them, ambushing them. So black people have to be kept under perpetual violent siege, and both parties help to carry this out. That's the reason why you can get bipartisan support for a COVID hate crime bill, because they both understand this is nothing more than a thinly veiled offensive against black people, because that's who it's really meant for. So both parties can get behind it. You notice that you didn't have any Republicans who are saying this is a dark day for America, and none of them saying, well, gee, whatever violent crime, isn't murder already against the law? Isn't assault already against the law? They didn't pull that out this time. Why? Because they understand that when laws like this get passed, what it really is a political message that the the federal government is getting behind a particular course of action. That's what these laws that's what they really symbolize. It is a way to show that this is something that the administration wants the federal government to focus on, to focus the federal dollars and effort toward this. That's what these things represent. The only reason the bastards were pretending as if they were actually going to do some police commission or a George Floyd Act is because both Republicans and Democrats alike understood that the power of the people had become so kindled against them that it was going to touch them. Minneapolis is supposed to be a Democratic city, and they saw what happened to that mayor when the people brought him to the town square and told him, you better defund the police or you're out of here. He saw the entire city was against him because he was going to try to stand on it until you realize, man, they're going to run me out of town on a rail. I'll be finished. And everybody who tries to stand with me will be finished. That's the only reason why you saw the gestures that you saw last year. It wasn't because of anything that happened at the ballot box. And when black people finally internalize that, we'll be a hell of a lot better off because we'll understand the nature of the game that's going on here. That's the reason why I posted yesterday, Malcolm X Day, May 19th, birthday of one of our greatest grandmaster teachers, one of our greatest warrior scholars. Malcolm told you what was called for. He said that if you got somebody who's speaking to you in the language of violence, you can't speak to him in the language of peace and love and brotherhood. Why, good night, they'll break you in two. And you certainly cannot speak to them in the language of silence. What that says to them is you're fine with it. Otherwise, you ain't even saying anything. So when the white supremacists decide that they're going to be sending us a message, that the politicians and the thugs with badges are all on the same page, and that they're going to be carrying out killings of black people just to make sure we're reminded that we are a people under siege, we got to make sure that we communicate clearly. And we also have to make sure that we support successful communication. We do not do it because we are attempting to get racist white supremacists like Jim Crow Joe Biden to do what is simply moral and right. When black folks stand in their own self-defense, what happened is just like you think that they were scrambling and tripping over their shoelaces last year to try to pretend like they were going to do something. You go ahead and show the black folks are going to stand in their own self-defense, and we're not going to raise our hand and wait for permission before we protect our lives or the lives of other black people. When that happens, all of a sudden the white supremacists, they're going in government and out of it. All of a sudden they're going to be like, wait, here's a law. We can pass a law right now. Gridlock is gone. Hey, you guys don't need to do anything. Please just go back to sitting on your hands. Go back to saying nothing. Hey, we're going to bring out Tyler Perry and some other black actors and some black has-beens like Oprah, and they're going to tell you not to do it. Hey, here's Roly Poly Martin. He's going to dance a jig for you. Don't do that. When that happens, when black folks actually make it clear that we're going to put an end to this anti-black violence, that justice is going to be produced. And what will happen is all of a sudden those same politicians who are talking about how, there's no guarantee of these things, when they realize that the people are taking control, that means these white supremacists in these ivory towers that we paid for, they're going to realize that the people are declaring you're no longer in control. And this is not something to be afraid of at all. This is something to be desired. This is a goal to be pursued. White supremacy is not going to keel over of its own accord. The damn thing's going to have to be knocked over. but it will have to be knocked over by its victims. And that means we have to be united. We have to be of one accord. We are unapologetic in our self-defense. We understand the situation that we're in, and just understand the white media is going to do everything that it can to try to undermine what we're saying, to try to break up what we're saying, to disrupt what we're saying. When Black folks start talking in terms of we're not going to be victimized anymore, then all of a sudden you're going to be having all of the same people who previously hadn't been saying anything, hadn't been doing anything, all of a sudden they're going to discover where we are. And that's fine, as long as they understand that nobody is going to be harming us. Not because we're hoping that some white supremacist in a government job will do something about it, but because we will not allow it.